A train ride through the Canadian Rockies is the stuff that adventure is made of. We will pass majestic mountain tops and vast evergreen forests. We will follow magnificent rivers and race along sparkling streams. On a thrilling side trip, we soar past crumbling snow cliffs and hike across sprawling glaciers. Altogether, we'll experience 700 miles of spectacular scenery and thrilling wilderness adventures on this unique journey through the Canadian Rockies. All aboard as Reader's Digest presents America's Scenic Rail Journeys. Our train trip begins in Jasper, Alberta, only 20 miles from British Columbia, on a train called the Scenic. This is an area of unsurpassed beauty, dotted with crystalline lakes and dominated by towering mountain peaks. Between Jasper and Prince George, we are greeted by one breathtaking vista after another. The Skeena line runs for 700 miles through the scenic heart of British Columbia to the Pacific Ocean. The first day of our journey will take us to Prince George.
Thank you very much.
Our conductor today is Dave Burns. He knows the rivers and mountains that shape the adventures of a trip on the Skeena.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, if you look to the right here, you'll see Mount Robson. It is 12,972 feet. The Fraser River is down below here, and we'll follow that all the way to Prince George.
The Fraser River flows for 850 miles, from its source in Yellowhead Lake all the way to the Strait of Georgia at Vancouver. For our first adventure, the train drops us off right at the Fraser River. Like so many rivers here, the Fraser is a salmon river. But it's also a link to a rich railroad history. To find out more, we'll go rafting with river guide Bruce Wilkinson.
We actually have a train coming on our tracks. The railway from the river here runs directly to our right. You can see the two lines along the mountain. It was two separate railways were built along that ridge right here. They were built around 1909 to 1914 through this area. When the railway was being constructed, about every 3 to 5 miles of railway track, they would have some kind of a community. Throughout the bush there, you can find many remnants of the railway. It's all there. It's just we can't see it anymore because the buildings have been removed, the forest has grown up over it. You'd be amazed at what you could find all the way through to the coast again, as far as buildings and towns, and they just are no more, and they were such small places that there isn't a real big written history about them. Okay, so we're going to get out here to have a look at some salmon. Oh, doesn't that water feel good? No. We got some here. If you come up here, you can see the salmon right here in front of us. There is 5 species of salmon in the Pacific Ocean. Chinook is the biggest, coho, sockeye, chums, and pinks. And this is the only one that can come this far. All 5 species behave the same way. They have to come to gravel to lay their eggs. They all have alevins, and they all go to saltwater to live their adult lives and come back here to spawn and die. And all fish die at spawning, males and females.
We're back on the train again. Our entire journey is through a remote part of British Columbia, only settled late in the 19th century. The railroad brought the rail builders and the settlers that followed them all their supplies. It was their only connection to the outside world.
Well, the train was their lifeline. It was totally their lifeline. There was no other transportation or to get into these places because there was no highways, no roads into it, and it was totally done by rail traffic.
In the openness of the domed car, the scenic wilderness that was once so forbidding to 19th century travelers now appears as a pageant of natural beauty unfolding all around us.
And that will do, VFX.
The Scenic recalls the early days of the railroad, even now, when it makes the occasional mail stop. Today, we'll be delivering a letter at the home of Marilyn Wheeler and her son Matthew.
Hello, Marilyn. Yeah, Harry Holmes wanted me to deliver this letter to you, so...
Oh, great.
There
Thanks.
you go. He's... You know, him being trying to be so cheap, he doesn't want to spend the price of the stamp.
Well, that's great. No, I don't know whether I've ever met him, but we've been waving to him since about
Well, there
59.
you go.
So.
Yeah, he's been around for a long time. He's quite a fellow, actually. Okay, it was very nice. We'll see you guys later, hey?
We'll see ya.
The lonesome echo of our train whistle drifts over these empty, rugged mountains. Only the moose and other animals will hear our train passing. Now the train brings us to one of the most thrilling adventures we'll have on the first leg of the journey. From Valemount, we'll take a helicopter high up to the mountains of Mount Robeson Provincial Park, and its centerpiece, the Berg Glacier. Below us, a labyrinth of craggy peaks is punctuated by narrow valleys and ominously shifting ice fields.
I'm gonna go right over top of Big B Ridge. I can't get tired of this.
Sure is a torquing out of that ice, isn't it?
Here we are for another hike.
We arrive at a place as remote and different from those of our ordinary lives as the surface of the moon. Our experienced mountain guide is Vernon Umson.
I like to go single file because there's mill wells and crevasses. And when you don't see me, don't follow me.
Right.
Crevasses are deep fissures in the glacial ice. They pose serious dangers for the amateur hiker. A fall into one of these crevasses could be fatal.
And it keeps milling it. It gets deeper. This is for me a very spiritual place, especially with help of the helicopter. You can bring people here who never experienced anything like this.
The vast ice sheet of Berg Glacier has been built up by countless winter snows. Massive chunks of blue-white ice calve off the face of the glacier and hurtle down into Berg Lake.
It's beautiful.
The comfortable train with its food and services is far below us now. But fortunately, our adventure includes lunch at Berg Lake.
It's a nice spot down there for lunch.
We got lots of moose burgers, glacier worm. Oh, this looks scary.
More than a mile above sea level, it's a real treat to be eating moose burgers among this remarkable scenery.
Any place was so beautiful.
Trip was just wonderful. We went on the top of that mountain over there.
I think coming up here, you get the cobwebs out of your brain.
That was an excellent day.
One final look at these majestic peaks, and then we're back on board the Skeena. The train soothes us after a long day's hike as we travel down out of the Canadian Rockies and head toward our first night's destination of Prince George. John Howarth is the year-round engineer on the Skeena for the Jasper to Prince George part of the journey. He's been operating locomotives for over 20 years, and he's a real product of the country.
My interest in the railway kind of goes back to when I was a little kid, because I grew up in a railway town, and my dad was an engineer. He worked for CN Rail at the time, and he drove steam engines. And when I was a little kid, I kind of always wanted to do that, and that's what I ended up doing. One of the earliest things I remember about the train is the steam engines that used to go roaring out of Jasper. One of our favorite things to do was to go out and put a big line of grease on the rail ahead of the steam engines, and they'd come out of Jasper with their heavy loads, and they'd be just pulling hard. If you can imagine, it'd be and they'd hit that grease and the wheels would just go and they'd be stalled. They couldn't do anything, so they'd have to back up. One time we were, hidden behind our rock laughing, and thinking we were all clear, we all stood up, and my dad was right in front of the rock, and he promptly took me over to a willow bush and cut a switch and switched me all the way home. When you take the train, there's just a certain charisma or a certain attraction that people have for the train to begin with. It has a mystique, and physically the train is spacious. You can get up and walk around. You can go and have a coffee, and some trains people go and have a drink. And for some reason, trains bring out the socialite in people, people that normally don't really talk. When there's sort of a captive audience on a train, they'll talk. And a lot of people that take the train will tell you they do it for that reason, that they've made some of the best friends they've ever had on the train. And people meet their mates for life on the train, and there's just some magic about taking the train that if you want to get somewhere quick, take the bus, but if you want to have a good time while you're getting there, take the train.
We cross the Fraser River one more time and enter Prince George. Prince George is a scenic city that sits at the crossroads of two railways. It was an important hub of the early Grand Trunk Pacific and is still a repository of railroad history.
Put some more wood on first.
We can learn about railroad's age of steam at the Central British Columbia Railway Museum and the equipment of this still working narrow gauge rail line. Ron Walker's steam engine is one of the more unique tourist attractions in the area.
Well, it was used on construction of the present-day CN line when it started out as the Grand Trunk Pacific.
All aboard!
The whistle on this thing is our little moneymaker.
There goes that whistle. And the conductor said, all aboard.
Gonna make that loud honk honk.
All we have to do to let anybody know that we're running is just start blowing that whistle and they'll become running.
Over there, wave, go, yay!
Roadbeds weren't required for these narrow gauge trains, so their tracks could be laid quickly and easily. They could go anywhere. Because they were so relatively small and lightweight, they were used for mining, logging, and construction of mainline railroads. Until the 1940s, steam provided the power for all rail engines. Back on the train at the start of our second day, we'll cross the Great Northern Plateau and travel from Prince George up to Smithers, through a landscape of wide mountain valleys and pristine lakes. This is Burns Lake, one of the literally hundreds of lakes and ponds that lie between Prince George and the coast mountains. Lakes like these, full of northern pike, rainbow trout, pickerel, and muskellunge, lure fishermen from all over the world. This one is called Millionaire's Pool because so many wealthy celebrities fish here. On more than one occasion, we are reminded how wild this country is. We get to see sights like this, a black bear lumbering across the tracks in front of us. As the Skeena begins to climb again, we head past Smithers and toward a land of misty coastal mountains. This is the home of Native Americans, known here as First Nations people. 20 miles north of Smithers, the Buckley River rushes through steep, rocky narrows near the village of Mauricetown. The largest village of the Buckley Valley Indians once stood here, and members of the tribe still catch salmon at this 50-foot wide gorge. Sure-footed native fishermen have used dip nets, traps, and harpoons to pull salmon like this one out of these roiling waters for over 5,000 years. A salmon weighing 105 pounds was reported caught at this very spot. This second day of our Canadian Rockies rail journey brings us to Kitwan-Cool, a small First Nations village of the Gitskan tribe. In the 18th century, the Gitskan tribe controlled much of the fur trade along the rivers, from here over 100 miles inland, all the way to Prince Rupert on the coast. Today, the village is best known for its totem poles and their elaborately carved animals and spirit figures which record this people's history. Often an important incident in the life of a particular family is commemorated in these images. The spirit figure here possesses an arresting, mysterious quality. High Chief Earl Malden is one of the Gitskan's most respected totem pole carvers. Here we see him roughing out the eye of a raven for a new totem pole.
Putting in the eye, rough out of the eye of this raven. Goes in like that. Okay.
Young men of the Gitskan tribe apprenticed themselves to Earl to learn the art of carving totems. As long as Earl Malden's poles survive, visitors will know that the Gitskan people had a vibrant culture in this place. Though this pole is decayed now, many last for 150 years or more. On the train, once again, we pass over the 190-foot Sealy Gulch Bridge, the highest on the rail line. The next bridge, at 163 feet, the second highest, crosses over our namesake, the Skeena River. We will follow the Skeena River all the way to our final destination at Prince Rupert. But before we arrive, the train stops on the river for another backcountry adventure. We leave the train with two Austrian tourists who get off here to go fishing. Skeena Valley guide Terry Guerin will take them out on the river today.
You can see some fish right underneath there.
Rivers throughout British Columbia are renowned for their fabulous fishing. The waters of this province hold 74 species of fish, and more than 750,000 anglers come here to try and catch them each year.
This is as far as you can go up one of the tributaries on the Skeena Valley. You've got sharp, high, 5,000-foot cliffs coming right into the river. When you live in a city, you forget about the natural part of our life that we miss out on.
You don't see roads, there are no power lines.
No telephone.
No phone, yeah. No cars. It's just a wilderness. Quiet, peaceful.
Unberührte Natur, ne?
He said nature's never been touched. If you go hiking in Austria, you see lots of people, and here you can go hiking and you don't see anybody.
Oh, he caught one. Hey, all right. Woohoo! Oh, that's a beauty. Nice looking fish. I prefer a catch and release emphasis on everything. It's just as much fun picking up a fish and then releasing it. Gently put him in. There he goes. All right. Oh, yeah. No, secluded.
A full day of fishing behind them, it's time for Terry to get Hubert and Florian back down to the Skeena River and to catch the float plane so they can rendezvous with our train at Prince Rupert.
Okay, guys, see you later. Have a good trip. All right, yeah.
Sit down and get the bill done.
Prince Rupert is Canada's most northerly Pacific port. On an island itself, it's a bustling port city. When this city was founded as the starting point for the Grand Trunk Pacific Railroad, many had visions of it becoming Canada's busiest Pacific port. But Vancouver easily retains that honor. Prince Rupert is the last stop of an unforgettable Canadian Rockies rail journey. Our train trip to the Pacific Ocean on the Skeena has been full of adventures. And we have traveled through one of the most stunning and dramatic landscapes on the entire North American continent. But now it's time to cross the continent to a city on the Atlantic Ocean, over 3,000 miles away, for the start of another exciting rail adventure, this time in the U.S. The train called the Adirondack begins its journey in the historic Hudson River Valley and continues up into the spectacular Adirondack State Park. We will experience the magnificent handiwork of nature as well as the classical works of human hands. We will discover remarkable views of the Hudson River and find some fabulous mansions hidden near her shores. We will enjoy the pastimes of the present right down the road from the monuments of our past. Come and see what makes a trip on the Adirondack such a movable feast for the eyes. The Adirondack leaves bright and early this morning.
Good morning. Where are you headed to? Albany. Either coach here, please.
Rick Palmer is our conductor today.
Rear end of Amtrak 69 to the head end. All clear on track number 5. Okay to depart New York's Penn Station, sir.
Our rail trip on Amtrak's Adirondack follows a route rich in history and culture. Traversing the length of eastern New York State and ending in exotic Montreal, today's journey will cover almost 400 miles.
That's good. Nice hit. There you go. Thank you very much.
The Hudson River is a tidal arm of the sea for the first 150 miles, stretching from its mouth at the Atlantic Ocean to the Federal Dam 15 miles above Albany. Within a few minutes of leaving New York City, the ride offers us magnificent views just beyond the train's windows. All the way to Albany, the train will skirt the shoreline of the majestic Hudson River. The river was named for Henry Hudson, an Englishman who sailed up this river for the Dutch in 1609. If you watch closely, you might catch a glimpse of riverkeeper John Cronin. The riverkeeper's mission is to track down and stop polluters who abuse the Hudson River.
I've been the Hudson Riverkeeper since 1983, but I've been working on the Hudson since 1974. And it's a great job because it gets me out on the river. I participate in protecting not only the beauty of the Hudson, but the Hudson's culture and the aesthetic resources of the river as well. This section of the Hudson we're in right now is not only one of the most beautiful sections of the river, but it's one of the most historic sections of the river. As you travel through this part of the Hudson, you're traveling along these jagged mountain cliffs, the old rugged Hudson Highlands, and you're looking at them almost the same way that the Native Americans saw them, the same way that the colonists saw them. There's that great sense of taking a trip along the Hudson is taking a trip through American history.
John Cronin works hard to provide safer and better access to the Hudson River for all visitors who come to enjoy her beauty.
I love taking the train on the river, and by far my favorite trip, and of course I'm prejudiced, is along the river, and I never tire of it. It's such a wonderful ride that but the sense that you have is the sense of just being part of that flow. You can almost sit back and imagine yourself instead of being propelled by an engine, being propelled by the flow and current of the Hudson as you're going along the shore.
One of the first remarkable sights on our trip is Bannerman's Castle. Francis Bannerman was an arms dealer who bought up most of the weapons captured in the Spanish-American War. He built this Scottish-style castle as part country home and part arsenal between 1905 and 1918. In 1920, some of his weapons exploded here, severely damaging the castle. The lower Hudson Valley offers us more than dramatic scenery. At our first stop in Tarrytown, we can take a number of side trips to historic homes and palatial estates. This is Sleepy Hollow country. One of America's first great writers, Washington Irving, called Tarrytown home. He died in 1859 and is buried here, at the Old Dutch Church in one of the oldest cemeteries in the country. Irving wrote Rip Van Winkle and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow about this area, and firmly fixed this rural landscape in the 19th century American imagination. Irving purchased this country estate, Sunnyside, in 1835. He described it as a little old-fashioned stone mansion as full of angles and corners as an old cocked hat. This 24-acre property is only about 50 yards from the rail line that Washington Irving opposed at first, but on which he eventually became a grateful traveler. Our next stop is at Lyndhurst, one of this country's most amazing Gothic revival mansions. It was constructed in 1838 and served as a summer home for the infamous 19th century financier Jay Gould. North of Tarrytown, you can visit this house and mill at Phillipsburg Manor. The Phillips family, who made a fortune in shipping and slaves, lived here from late in the 17th century until just after the American Revolution. This is the Rockefeller Estate at Kaikut, meaning lookout. Kaikut was built between 1907 and 1913 on a hilltop with panoramic views of the valley and the Hudson River below. Each year, almost 50,000 people come here to marvel at the opulent surroundings and to admire one of the best sculpture collections in the world. John D. Rockefeller was the founder of Standard Oil Company. His son, John D. Rockefeller Jr., commissioned this mansion for his parents and started the art collection here. Nelson Rockefeller, Jr.'s son, was governor of New York State and then vice president. All of them lived here at Kaikut. The project director at Kaikut is Henry Joyce.
And this estate at Kaikut is actually one of the last of the great Hudson River estates. The house was built here because John D. Rockefeller, who moved the offices of Standard Oil to New York in the early 1880s and wanted a country house outside of the city. His son really commissioned many of the sculptures for the gardens, including the Oceanus figure, the Roman god of the oceans. Junior was more interested in art collecting, and it was his son, Nelson, who was particularly interested in contemporary works of art. Nelson Rockefeller's biggest impact at Kaikut was with the 70 pieces of sculpture that he used in the gardens, which he collected over a 30 or 40-year period, including the major European and American artists of the 1960s and 70s. The Picasso group at Kaikut is called the Bathers, and was inspired by people on the beach in the south of France where Picasso lived. In the Kaikut piece you see a diver about to dive off a diving board and other figures. It's an amazing post-Cubist piece, typical of his repertory at that period. We see at Kaikut also a piece called Spiny by Alexander Calder, which was actually commissioned for the site. You see the sculpture looking towards the Hudson River. It was made in the early 1960s from a sketch that Alexander Calder had made in 1941, which Nelson Rockefeller owned. When he moved to this house, he commissioned a large-scale piece appropriate for the parkland setting and the Hudson River view.
Further up the tracks, our train passes Hyde Park Station, which is only a few miles from Springwood, Franklin Delano Roosevelt's home. When FDR died in 1945, his body was brought back to his beloved Springwood by train, and he is buried there, along with his wife Eleanor, in the Rose Garden. Our last stop before the Adirondack Mountains is near Annandale-on-Hudson. A short ride from the train is Montgomery Place, which was founded in 1802 by Janet Livingston Montgomery. Her illustrious family built over 40 mansions in this area, and her father is the man who administered the first oath of office to George Washington. Its grounds may be the most beautiful of any estate along the Hudson River.
They're not all the same thing.
Timothy Steinhoff is the director of horticulture.
Every full moon from May through September, we have a very informal walk through the garden at twilight so that people can really enjoy this landscape at its best time of day. The light is very interesting. And as the days cool, the fragrance of the flowers begins to rise, and it culminates with dessert and coffee over on the north pavilion of the house, which is really one of America's first great outdoor living rooms. So it's a real nice chance for people who are interested in gardens or history or architecture to just take in the atmosphere and enjoy being together. Lots of comments back on how it seems to be sort of a little bit lost in time. And the whole evocative sense that all the colors and scents that it really is a sort of out-of-body experience.
Back on the train, it's time to leave the romantic landscapes and historic homes of the lower Hudson Valley. We're heading farther north into the Adirondacks, which begin in the foothills near Saratoga Springs. We pass Albany, the dynamic and powerful capital of New York State, on our way.
Take care. Watch your step, please. Crystal, can I have that for you? Thank you so much.
Thanks,
It's very
honey.
nice
I'll
to have
see
you
you
again.
later.
Take
Okay,
care.
I'll see you at the restaurant.
Okay, travel
Thank
with us
you.
again soon.
Okay, definitely.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
A town of only about 30,000 people in the off-season, Saratoga Springs can easily double in population during the summer. It has always been the quintessential American resort. In the 19th century, everyone, with or without money, came here to play. And the architecture they left behind displays the grandeur of that time. For well over 300 years, people have come here for the natural beauty and for the healing waters of the mineral springs. Though steam cabinets were better known in the 1930s and 40s, people still come here to relax in the famous Roosevelt baths and to socialize in the Great Hall of Springs. And since 1864, when the first track was opened, they have come for the races. Each August, in Saratoga, everyone becomes a handicapper.
There aren't a lot of places where they have horse racing, but more importantly, there aren't a lot of places where the tradition of horse racing goes back as far as it does here, and that the track is such an old institution. And that culture and the horse set is part of the development of the city, and you feel it everywhere you go. It feels like you're back in a different era.
David Hyde Pierce is the actor known as Niles Crane on the Emmy Award-winning television show Frasier. David grew up in Saratoga Springs.
I think if you get on the train, you have to get off at Saratoga. It was sort of formed as a spa resort, and still has that element, and you can go and do that. You have to see the Bachelor Mansion. It's a bizarre, unique, and wonderful example of elaborate Victorian architecture, as well as all of the magnificent houses around town. If you just drive around town, that's one thing you have to do. Certainly go to the races if it's racing season. In the larger sense, it's a place where people can come and just soothe themselves in a beautiful setting, in an unusually rich cultural environment of the ballet and the orchestra, and still have the quiet of a small town.
From Saratoga, it's a short ride on the train up to Glens Falls, a city which sits right on the edge of the Adirondack State Park. The air gets a little more crisp as we start up into the mountains, and a lot thinner if we take a ride at the Adirondack Balloon Festival. The annual event attracts hundreds of balloonists and thousands of spectators to the Lake George region. Here you can find just about any size, shape, style, color, or species of balloon to spirit you up into the ether. Now we truly start into the Adirondacks, the land of over 2,000 lakes and ponds. The train takes us now to Fort Ticonderoga, which guards the southern tip of Lake Champlain and is one of the most popular tourist attractions in this area.
Out to the west and north for the better part of a mile, you have roughly concentric lines of fortifications. Things like redoubts and batteries, little mini forts, connected often by a covered way, which is a ditch about the height of a man, and it allows you to move easily back and forth among these fortifications without being observed. The fortress has a central structure that's a rectangle. On each corner, you see a diamond-shaped bastion, and those are very useful devices. They give you pretty much 100% visibility all the way around the edge of the fort. You can see everyone and anything that goes by, but it can also be used as a point of last defense.
1, 2, 3.
Originally built by the French in 1755, the fort was taken over by the British after the French and Indian War. Near the start of the American Revolution, Benedict Arnold, Ethan Allen, and the Green Mountain Boys led a successful dawn raid on the fortress that secured a first victory for the rebels, even though they had to abandon the fort to the British in 1777. From the cannons of Ticonderoga, the train heads toward Port Henry. For this part of our journey, the tracks hug the western shore of Lake Champlain. The lake was named for Samuel de Champlain, who was exploring here in 1609, the same year that Henry Hudson was charting the Hudson's tidal flow up to Albany. For most of its length, this gorgeous lake establishes the northern boundary between New York State and Vermont. The water, mountains, and sky provide spectacular views for the next 50 miles. Sue Vail is a regular passenger from Glens Falls.
And I come to the train when I feel I need some inspiration and get things in perspective. The train is kind of my psychologist. I ride the train, listen to the whistle and the clickety-click, and I love it. I find it very soothing, very relaxing. Just sitting and looking out the windows is fabulous because there's so much out there to see. I'm happy on the train. It doesn't matter where it's going. I'm just happy to be in the train.
Ladies and gentlemen, the body of water next to us is Lake Champlain, 122 miles of it. The 6th largest lake in the United States, the largest lake outside of the Great Lakes.
Some people who have ridden the Adirondack have looked out at this water and thought they saw something a bit unusual. Port Henry claims Lake Champlain's resident sea monster for its own. Champ, as the legendary creature is known, has been seen by lots of people around here, starting with Samuel de Champlain himself in 1609. Just as with Nessie, the Loch Ness monster, people have described Champ as a large sea animal, about 30 feet long, with a long neck and a relatively small head. The scientists call this animal a plesiosaurus, and there have been numerous scientific expeditions, both here and at Loch Ness, that claim to have located sonar images of something quite large moving under the water. So as we pass by Port Henry, remember to keep your eyes open and watch the surface of the lake.
Okay, folks, station is Westport. Watch your step. Take care. Thanks. See you again.
Our next stop is at Westport, which is the Adirondacks jumping off point for Lake Placid in the Saranac region.
Bye, Sue.
Bye, Craig.
See you again.
Thanks. Yeah,
take care.
The 1932 and 1980 Winter Olympic Games were held here at Lake Placid, and U.S. figure skaters still practice here at the Olympic Arena. This famous resort in the middle of the Adirondacks is actually on Mirror Lake. Lake Placid's a perfect village for shopping, dining, and sightseeing, and a good base of operations for fishing, hiking, or a boating trip into the Adirondack wilderness. Between the Civil War and the Great Depression, many wealthy families bought large tracts of land in the Adirondacks. To match the spa houses in Saratoga and the ocean retreats at Newport, they hired local craftsmen to build great camps for them, with expansive lodges and outbuildings made from native materials. The term roughing it took on different meaning in these estates. The owners were afforded every conceivable luxury, even in the heart of the dense forest. Most of these sylvan retreats had large entertainment rooms for those times when visitors didn't want to commune with nature. Though the styles of the great camps are usually eclectic, the best of them mirror the rustic environment surrounding them. Upper Saranac Lake is one of the larger lakes in the Adirondacks, with over 100 miles of shoreline and 5,500 acres of water surface. Almost half of the lake is set aside as Forever Wild Forest Preserve, and over 500 mostly single-family camps occupy the rest of the area. One of the great camps that is still in use here was formerly known as Camp Winundra. It was designed in the early 1930s for William Rockefeller by the architect William Diston. Set on the point, it is one of the most fashionable and exclusive resorts in the Adirondacks. Let's pause for a moment here to savor the peaceful sounds and sights of the Adirondacks. Our next stop on this rail trip brings us to one of the most popular tourist attractions in the Adirondacks. Often referred to as the Grand Canyon of the East, the Ausable Chasm is truly a wonder of nature. For countless centuries, the Ausable River has carved a 60-foot deep channel through these rocks, creating remarkable sandstone cliffs. The general manager of the Ausable Chasm Company is Patricia Stone.
We've been in continuous operation since 1870. The chasm remains a natural attraction where people can actually go and see the handiwork of nature. I think they experience a walk back in time, an area that has really remained untouched by any modern forces. The rock formations have been here long before any of us have been around. Elephant's Head would be one. It is a natural rock formation which definitely resembles the head of an elephant. And another one would be Jacob's Well. It was carved by, or created by, the swirling forces with possibly a small pebble to begin with, and it's made a hole about 6 feet deep and probably 3 feet in diameter. I think anybody that's from a metropolitan area can't believe the peace and serenity of the Adirondacks in general. And they're really amazed that so much of it does remain forever wild in its natural state.
Back on board the train, we watch the terrain flatten out as we approach the province of Quebec. Extending all the way to the northernmost boundary of Hudson's Bay, Quebec comprises 523,000 square miles and is Canada's largest province.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. As you can see, we are just going over the St. Lawrence River with the skyline of Montreal off to our right. the final destination point for this evening's train.
With over 3 million inhabitants, Montreal is Canada's second largest city. Boasting the largest French-speaking population in the New World, Montreal is a romantic European town with stunning cathedrals and stately architecture. But it is also a thoroughly cosmopolitan city. While Montreal is our gateway to Canada, it is also our last stop on this Adirondack excursion. Our rail journeys through the Canadian Rockies and on the Adirondacks have shown us incredible mountain ranges and river valleys, railroad towns and historic forts, palatial estates and storybook cottages, and more than 1,000 miles of breathtaking vistas. What better way to travel through the Canadian Rockies and the Adirondacks is there than on America's scenic rail journeys? Thanks for riding with us.